Gray smoke began curling up from the charging port of Clarissa Bloomfield's pristine cream-colored Tesla, followed by sharp crackling sounds and the unmistakable stench of gasoline in the air. She stumbled back in panic, yanking the cord from her car and screaming, "You sabotaged my vehicle." And me, I stood behind the curtain watching it all unfold with the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. The first time I saw her cream-colored Tesla parked halfway onto my driveway, cables snaked across my rose beds like it owned the place, I thought I was hallucinating. But no, there it was. Model S, spotless, shimmering under the Rose Hill Park sun, and connected to my charger. The same Level 2 charger I'd installed just 3 weeks ago, mounted with pride beside my garage workbench, nestled under a little overhang where I like to sip coffee and tinker with weekend projects. I'm Nathan Ellis, 44, software engineer, DIY hobbyist. I moved to Rose Hill Park for peace space and my backyard hybrid tea roses. Not for this. Freeze frame right there. You're probably wondering how we got here. How I ended up standing in garden clogs holding a half-finished espresso, watching my HOA president pilfer electrons from my house like it was a public utility. That's Clarissa Bloomfield, 61, four-time HOA president. Known for her velvet-laced, passive aggression and a pearl necklace she wore like a crown. Her front yard was an English rose museum, everything from David Austin's to ancient Gallicas. She talked to them like royalty. But don't let the floral obsession fool you. This woman could weaponize a bylaw faster than most people could make a cup of tea. It all began after I installed my charger, a sleek, graphite gray beauty, with a coiled cord that snapped back like a tape measure and glowed green like some futuristic relic. I loved that thing. My own small step into a greener, cleaner, quieter life. And for a few glorious days, that's what I had. Until Clarissa. That first afternoon, I'd just come home from a work call and noticed her Tesla glinting in the sun cable, plugged-in charger light, pulsing, humming softly. I stared at it for a full minute, jaw slightly slack. Then the front door of her Tudor-style monstrosity opened, and Clarissa emerged like she was gliding onto the stage of a suburban opera. "Oh, Nathan, darling," she cooed. "I hope you don't mind. I've been having a bit of trouble with my unit. Yours is just so accessible." She gave a little wave, unplugged her car, looped the cable directly across my English rose bush like it was a jump rope, and walked off. Didn't wait for my reaction. Didn't ask, just floated away. That first time I was too stunned to react. But later that night, while checking the smart charger app on my phone and seeing the spike in usage, my fingers started to twitch. I left a friendly note the next day, polite, printed, laminated even. "Hi, Clarissa. Just a gentle reminder, this charger is for private use only. If you're having trouble with yours, happy to recommend an electrician. Nathan." I thought that would be the end of it. How naive. 2 days later, there it was again. Tesla parked right at the edge of my lawn, cord fully extended, battery happily sipping from my outlet. This time, she didn't even bother to come outside. I unplugged her car, coiled the cable with a little more force than necessary, parked my own EV diagonally to block her access. That evening, she rang the doorbell. I opened it to find Clarissa standing there in her silk scarf and Pearl's smile painted on like acrylic. "Nathan, dear," she said sweetly, "I noticed your car is obstructing the community charger." "Community?" I asked, blinking. "Clarissa, that's my personal charger, on my property, wired into my meter." "Well," she said, eyes hardening just slightly. "In a neighborhood like ours, sharing resources is simply good neighborliness, especially with your HOA president." There it was, the threat wrapped in lace. I stared at her, caught somewhere between disbelief and rage. "Clarissa, this is theft," I said flatly. "You're stealing electricity from me." She scoffed. "Oh, please, a few kilowatt hours. Let's not be melodramatic. Think of it as your contribution to Rose Hill's sustainability goals." She actually patted me on the shoulder, like I was some underpaid valet who should feel honored to serve. That night I installed a camera above the charger. Not just for evidence, though, that was part of it. I was starting to worry what else she thought was community property. My hose, my compost barrel, my mailbox. The footage didn't disappoint. Night after night, Clarissa pulled up with that same regal self-assurance plugged in and walked away without so much as a glance toward my house. And if that weren't galling enough, one morning, I found a handwritten note tucked into my windshield wiper. Cream stationery. Gold embossed initials CB. It read, "Nathan, would you be so kind as to untangle the charger cable next time? It was quite a nuisance to fix. Also, your rose hedge appears to be struggling, perhaps a calcium deficiency. Just a thought. Yours in community, Clarissa." That was the turning point. Not the stolen power, not the condescension. It was the note. The gall of critiquing my roses. I'd cultivated that particular hedge from cuttings my grandmother gave me. It was my pride, my sanctuary. My sanctuary being judged by the same woman who fined a neighbor for planting pink petunias because they clashed with the HOA aesthetic. I didn't get mad. I got meticulous. I started documenting every theft, every smug glance caught on camera, every spike in my electric bill. And somewhere between the second note and the third incident, I realized something important. Clarissa didn't think what she was doing was wrong. She believed, truly believed, that she was entitled. And that was the most dangerous kind of neighbor. That's when the idea began to form. It started as a joke in my head. A what if, a passing thought during a late-night scroll through EV maintenance forums. But then I started sketching. Just for fun, I told myself. A charger that looked real, plugged in like real, glowed like real, but didn't feed electricity. No, it fed something else. And once that idea took root, it blossomed, like one of Clarissa's own English roses, only sharper, meaner, and far more combustible. It started with a sketch. Just lines on a yellow legal pad next to my laptop scribbled while I sat through yet another Zoom call that could have been an email. I called it Charger V2, at first half joking, half serious. A visual daydream, an outlet for the frustration that had been building like summer humidity. But then over the following nights, that sketch turned into schematics, and the schematics turned into parts lists. And before I knew it, I was deep into what I now called Operation Thorn Rose. Because Clarissa Bloomfield had mistaken my quietness for permission, my politeness for submission. She thought her pearls and rose tea and HOA badge gave her dominion over anything she could see from her bay window. But I was done being seen as a subject in her suburban kingdom. I was about to remind the queen that roses have thorns. From the outside, the decoy charger I was building looked identical to the real one. A graphite gray casing, J11772 plug indicator light, even a satisfying magnetic coil. But inside, that's where the magic or madness, depending on your perspective, happened. I gutted a salvage charger I found online, then installed a chemical-resistant bladder, narrow tubing, and a modified spout from a racing fuel canister. Everything was routed through the nozzle, disguised beneath molded plastic and cosmetic fins. It had one job: deliver 1 quart of premium, unleaded, directly into the Tesla's charge port. No sparks, no fireballs, just chaos in a confined space. Gasoline doesn't play nice with EV systems, and that was the point. I wasn't out to hurt anyone. I was out to destroy one thing: the myth of Clarissa Bloomfield's untouchability. In the weeks that followed, I treated my garage like a classified lab. I machined fittings by hand, triple sealed every connection, stress tested the valve. I even added a tiny spring mechanism that created that familiar click when the nozzle was inserted, just like the real one. It was devious, it was excessive, and it was perfect. Meanwhile, Clarissa carried on like nothing was amiss. Her Tesla continued its unsolicited happy hours on my charger. She left more notes too. One scolded me for insufficient grass edging near my walkway. Another suggested I consider realigning my climbing roses along the trellis for better HOA conformity. The woman had turned passive aggression into an art form, and I was about to become her critic. I studied her schedule. Through the camera above my driveway, I logged every visit, every smug plug-in, every unauthorized kilowatt stolen. It became clear Clarissa had a pattern. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes Sunday afternoons around 4:00 p.m. It was her sweet spot enough time to top off her Tesla before attending whatever neighborhood committee or high society garden event she'd graced with her presence. That meant I needed to strike on a weekday. Quiet, predictable, preferably when most neighbors were at work and the HOA busybodies were napping under weighted blankets. Tuesday, 11:30 a.m., I made the swap. I disconnected my real charger, coiled it lovingly, and placed it in a locked cabinet inside the garage. Then I mounted the decoy in its place. It clicked perfectly into the wall bracket. I adjusted the angle of the camera to get an unobstructed view. And then I waited. I didn't go back to my desk. I didn't try to code. I sat by the front window behind half-closed blinds, sipping a lukewarm coffee with jittery fingers, watching my driveway like a hawk. At 4:06 p.m., I saw it, the telltale glint of sunlight bouncing off cream-colored paint. The Tesla Model S crept into view, slow and smooth like a shark in a koi pond. Clarissa was behind the wheel, her silver hair sculpted into a helmet of defiance. She pulled up right where I expected, diagonally across the curb charger port, a line like it had muscle memory. She didn't glance at my house, didn't knock, didn't hesitate. She popped open the port door, walked up the driveway like it was hers, and grabbed the nozzle. My nozzle. I held my breath. My entire body tensed as she inserted it into the port. It made the thunk I'd engineered. Then she pulled the trigger. A perfect motion. Flawless. Just as planned. The gasoline began to flow silently, soaking the sensitive pins and electronics inside the charge port. From my vantage point, I couldn't hear anything, but I saw everything. Clarissa stepped back and began scrolling on her phone. 2 minutes passed, then 3. Then a wisp of smoke curled upward like a whisper. Her head tilted, confused. She leaned toward the car, frowning. That's when the real smoke hit. Thick, gray, acrid. And the smell, even from behind the window, through the glass, I caught a whiff burnt plastic mixed with something sharper, more volatile. Clarissa yelped, stumbled back, and dropped her handbag. She reached for the nozzle, tugging frantically. It was slick, slippery, but finally it came loose with a splatter of fluid onto the concrete. The smoke deepened. Popping sounds crackled from inside the charge port. Not loud, not cinematic, just precise, sharp death rattles of a dying system. The car's dashboard flashed red, then went dark. Clarissa was now yelling, high-pitched, panicked, clutching her phone with both hands as if it might protect her from the mechanical meltdown in front of her. Neighbors began peeking out their windows. A few stepped onto their porches. And me, I stepped back from the window, set down my coffee, and calmly walked outside. I put on my best face of concern. "Clarissa," I called, voice full of faux alarm. "What happened?" She spun toward me like I'd thrown a rock. "Your charger," she screamed. It tried to kill my car. It's faulty. It's criminal. It's your fault." I raised both hands. "Whoa, okay. Let's call the fire department. Maybe something shorted." Her face was bright red. Smoke continued to drift from the Tesla. I could hear her muttering curses under her breath. "It was fine last night." "You must have tampered with it," I shrugged. "Clarissa, you've been using my charger without permission for weeks. I have footage. Maybe the wear and tear finally caught up." She blinked. "You recorded me?" "You've been on my property," I said evenly. "Yes, for safety reasons. You know, liability insurance, HOA compliance. That last one hit her like a slap." Her eyes darted toward the forming crowd. People were murmuring now. And then came the sirens. A single fire truck and a patrol car rolled into the cul-de-sac like the grand finale of a HOA horror story. Within minutes, professionals surrounded the car. They donned gloves, popped the frunk, shined lights into the charger port. The fire captain muttered something to the police officer. The officer turned to me. "Sir, is this your charger?" "It is," I said, nodding. "Or rather, it was. I replaced it last night. The original's inside. I can show you." "You just replaced it?" the captain asked. Why I looked at Clarissa, then back. Because someone had been helping themselves to it. "I thought maybe it had been tampered with." Clarissa barked a laugh. "Tampered? You sabotaged it, ma'am," the officer interrupted. "Did you have explicit permission to use his charger today?" Clarissa hesitated. He never said no. Actually, I said gently, I did. In writing, I still have the note." The firefighter emerged with gloves blackened. "Captain," he said, "there's gasoline in the charge port." Clarissa's mouth dropped. "Gasoline? I haven't been to a gas station in years." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Then how'd it get in there?" "He did it," she cried, pointing at me. "He set me up, ma'am. You were the one who plugged the car in. It was his charger, the charger he installed last night." The tension hung in the air. I handed over the real charger, clean, pristine, humming softly. "This one's mine," I said. "Check it if you want. Never left the garage since the swap." The captain sniffed it, checked the plug, and nodded. The officer scribbled in his notepad. Clarissa's voice had gone hoarse. The crowd had doubled. Someone was filming. And I just stood there letting it all unfold like petals opening one by one. Because the truth was as sharp and undeniable as a rose's thorn. Clarissa Bloomfield had finally pricked herself. And the bloom of revenge. It was just beginning. The scent of burnt plastic still lingered in the air when the fire engine's brakes hissed in front of my house. And for a moment, everything slowed like the final act of a play where the villain stands center stage, trembling mascara, running as the curtain begins to fall. Clarissa Bloomfield was pacing in her kitten heels, voice pitched high and thin, clutching her handbag like a lifeline as two uniformed firefighters circled her disabled Tesla. I stood a few steps back from the chaos, hands in my pockets, face painted with the perfect mixture of concerned neighbor and mildly confused homeowner. Just like I'd rehearsed, it was his Charger, Clarissa shrieked, pointing a trembling manicured finger at the decoy mounted on my garage wall. "It's faulty, defective. He sabotaged my car." The fire captain, a solid man with salt and pepper sideburns and eyes that had probably seen worse than melting luxury vehicles, turned calmly to me. "Sir, can you confirm, is that your EV Charger?" "Technically, yes," I said, "but I swapped it out last night. The one she plugged into today is a backup I installed because I suspected someone was using my original Charger without permission. I can show you the primary unit still inside the garage." The captain exchanged a glance with the officer standing beside him, who raised a brow. "Why would you think someone was using your Charger?" "I have security footage," I replied. "Clarissa's car has been parked on my driveway multiple times over the past several weeks. I didn't authorize it." Clarissa's jaw dropped, pearl necklace gleaming as her mouth opened and closed without sound. "He's lying. That's ridiculous. I used it maybe once, maybe twice." The officer took a notebook from his back pocket and jotted something down. "You just said it was his Charger, ma'am, and now you're saying you used it regularly, only because he never told me I couldn't. This is a community after all. We're supposed to share." Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. "I am the president of this HOA, where I muttered quietly. A few of our neighbors had begun gathering at the end of the cul-de-sac. I saw Mrs. Kendall from 2 doors down, Mr. Richmond and his golden retriever, even Mr. Santos, the quiet retired Navy guy who never came out for anything unless it involved fireworks or illegal leaf blowers. Clarissa was unraveling, and they all knew it. The fire captain turned to his team. "Check the port," he said. "Let's confirm ignition source." Minutes later, one of the younger firefighters kneeling beside the smoking Tesla looked up. "Sir, there's gasoline residue. It's all over the connector. Burn the plastic components inside the port." "Gasoline," the captain repeated. "On an electric vehicle, smells like premium unleaded." "I haven't been near a gas station in years," Clarissa screamed, her voice rising into a soprano shriek. "You did this, Nathan. You poured gas into that thing. You wanted to destroy my car." "Why would I destroy your car?" "Clarissa," I asked, calm as lake water. "You're the one who plugged it in. I wasn't even outside." The officer turned to me again. "Sir, do you have that security footage?" Of course, I let him inside. My laptop was already open. I'd queued up the footage an hour ago, time-stamped HD, clear as day. We watched together as Clarissa's Tesla pulled up at 4:07 p.m. She exited, grabbed the plug, inserted it, pressed the trigger. She scrolled her phone. Smoke started 2 minutes later. She panicked, yanked the cord, screamed. Not once did I appear on screen. Not once did I intervene. I could see the officer's jaw tighten. He nodded, expression unreadable, then followed me back outside. "Ma'am," he said, voice firm, "now we've reviewed footage showing you entering Mr. Ellis's property and plugging your vehicle into his equipment. This occurred without permission. The Charger in question appears to have contained a combustible substance, gasoline, according to preliminary fire crew reports." "He set me up," she gasped. "That man, he's a snake in khakis. I've seen the way he trims his hedges like he's hiding something. He's dangerous." That sent a murmur through the crowd. "He trims his hedges," someone whispered. "Really?" The fire captain shook his head. "Ma'am, if there's gasoline in the port and you initiated the connection, then regardless of your opinion of your neighbor's gardening habits, This falls under operator error. But he planted it. He built that thing as a trap. Even if that were the case, the officer said coolly, you had no right to use it without his permission. Clarissa stood there, lips trembling, trapped between disbelief and fury. Her car, a symbol of her superiority, her reign, her so-called eco-conscious perfection, sat there wheezing smoke. A few moments later, the tow truck arrived. Tesla's roadside assistance team took one look and confirmed what I already knew. Catastrophic port damage, likely battery contamination, potential thermal compromise. Translation, total loss. And insurance. Well, they weren't pleased to hear that Clarissa had used a private unapproved charger on someone else's property. When I overheard the adjuster on the phone ask, so just to confirm she trespassed and plugged into a third-party unit without written consent, I knew that check wasn't coming. By sunset, the Tesla was gone, just a black smear on my driveway, where premium dreams had gone up in smoke. And Clarissa, she spent the rest of the evening cooped up inside her house blinds drawn HOA authority, withering like an unwatered rose. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled within 48 hours, not by her, by the residents, led by none other than Mr. Santos and Mrs. Kendall. The turnout was the highest in neighborhood history, standing room only in the community center. Someone even brought cookies. Clarissa arrived looking like a faded postcard of her former self. The pearls were gone, the silk blouse replaced with a beige cardigan. She shuffled to the front, tried to speak, but the room was no longer hers. They let her ramble for 10 minutes about sabotage, about community betrayal, about the dangerous rise of garage-engineered extremism. Then the vote was called, and just like that, Clarissa Bloomfield was voted out 96% in favor, 4% abstaining. The HOA charter was revised within the week. The new board transparent, neighborly, and far less interested in finding people over mismatched mulch. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood bloomed again, literally. Mr. Chomanidionernai. Richmond planted peonies in his front yard. Mrs. Kendall brought back her fairy statue. And I expanded my rose hedge. Full bloom. Unapologetically wild. A few neighbors even gave me gnome figurines as jokes. I lined them up proudly at the base of the hedge, each one holding a different tiny garden tool. One day I caught Clarissa watching from her window. No anger in her eyes, just tired confusion, like someone who'd awoken from a long dream and couldn't quite remember who they used to be. The decoy charger. It sits now in a box in my garage, tucked beside old photo albums and Christmas lights. A piece of suburban legend. A reminder that sometimes justice doesn't come with handcuffs or headlines. Sometimes it comes with wires, a quart of gas, and the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved. As for me, I kept the camera up, the charger locked, and my roses. They've never looked better. Sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with sirens or public showdowns. Sometimes it grows quietly like a rose in the shade and strikes only when the moment is right. What Nathan Ellis experienced in Rose Hill Park is something many of us have faced in one way or another, a violation of boundaries. A neighbor, a co-worker, or even a friend who believes they're entitled to what's not theirs, who twists kindness into obligation, and who hides manipulation behind a smile. Clarissa Bloomfield didn't just steal electricity, she stole respect, space, and peace of mind. But instead of exploding in anger or stooping to her level, Nathan responded with precision, patience, and the quiet power of documentation and preparation. The message here is clear: never underestimate the strength of someone who seems quiet. The people who don't bark back immediately, the ones who observe, who wait, who analyze, are often the ones who deliver justice in the most unforgettable ways. And to anyone who's ever felt small in the face of authority or dismissed by someone who wields power unfairly, remember this: boundaries matter. Your home, your energy, your time, your dignity, they are not community property. You have every right to protect them, even if the world around you pretends otherwise. But let's also be honest. What makes this story so satisfying isn't just the revenge, it's the symbolism. Clarissa, the Queen of Roses, undone by the very things she thought she mastered: image. Appearances can be deceiving. And in the end, it wasn't HOA bylaws or status that brought her down. It was arrogance and one man's refusal to be walked on. At U.S. Justice Story, we share tales like these not to promote retaliation, but to highlight the resilience and quiet strength of everyday Americans who stand up when their patience has been stretched too thin. Sometimes it's not about shouting. Sometimes it's about showing the truth unfiltered and undeniable. Thank you so much for watching, for supporting our channel, and for being part of this growing community that believes in fairness, dignity, and accountability. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below and let us know. Have you ever had to reclaim your power in a way nobody saw coming? And remember, when the thorns come out, it's not always about vengeance. Sometimes it's just about reminding people you don't mess with the gardener. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and keep your roses blooming.